My name is Nikki Yago. I am the business development partner at Talevation, and I am excited to co-present this webinar with Julie Stevens from SHL. Julie wears two hats. She's the director of market development at SHL and also the CEO of Mojo Health, or as Julie likes to call it, the Chief Joy Officer at Mojo Health. So she brings both an HR leader and a CEO's perspective to the table today. And so thank you, Julie, for joining us. This is fantastic. Glad to have her here and absolutely excited to have all of you here. We have a great selection of people that are joining us today. It's professionals from all across the spectrum, all different experiences. And so we're excited to have you here. And throughout this webinar, we really want you to please feel free to engage. We're going to have a few polls that we will put out there. Please take time to participate in the polls. And if you have questions, we really want you to put your questions in the chat. We might not be able to address them right away, but we're certainly going to have a question and answer session available at the end. And we absolutely want to hear from you. And so let's dive in. Let me give you a brief overview of our agenda for today. We're going to go over three main sections to really highlight. First, we'll explore AI and how it's changing the workplace dynamics and how it's prompting leaders to rethink roles and structures within our organization. So essentially, what does work look like as AI becomes a bigger team member in our organization? And then along with that, customer service. This is going to be a fun landscape for you to explore with us. We're going to zoom in on customer service as a real world example. How are the skills for customer service reps changing because of AI? We'll talk about what's rising in importance, what's been changing already that you probably haven't even noticed. And this section is going to be fun because you're going to really get to see some fascinating before and after data from research that has been done by SHL that's really going to drive it home and allow you to see what some of these transformations are that we're talking about today. And then finally, we're going to talk about the role of HR in all of this. As HR leaders, how can we facilitate these changes? We'll cover things like talent audits, succession planning, ensuring we use AI ethically. That's so important because we want to be responsible within our organizations. But basically, how do we lead the change so our people and our companies thrive? And we have a lot to cover, but it's all very relevant to the challenges that we're facing today. And no matter your industry or your company size, I'm pretty sure that one of those topics is relevant to you right now. Again, please, as something comes up, if you have a question, drop that in the chat because we do want to hear from you. But let's get started. And so the future of work with generative AI, it's very buzzworthy, but what does it really mean for our day-to-day work? And in simple terms, generative AI is changing how we work by amplifying what humans can do, not just replacing us. So it's not all about the fear tactic. It's about the good side of things as well. And the big message here is that the shift, it's not just about robots coming in. It's not like the movie, at least not yet. Hey, but right now it's about augmentation. And because of this, we're seeing companies reimagine workflows and redefine roles around this basic idea, and redesigning their team of humans and how humans are working, what our job descriptions are looking like, and we're kind of at a pivotal moment. It's probably not unlike when computers came about and internet came about and people were scared and thinking, is my job going to be relevant? How much is this going to change things? But the reality is probably one of the greatest things that ever happened to us. I walk around with a mini computer and internet all the time and can't imagine how I lived before that. And so generative AI is really affecting the workplace in a similar way, but it is much bigger. So in this future of work, humans remain central. But again, the ideal workplace strengths are slightly different. And now we have a quick poll. So if you do have your little mini computer handy, it would be great if you would get it out and scan that QR code. What we want to know is, what are some of the ways that you are currently using AI in your organization? And we'd love to hear from that. It's anonymous. So we're just looking for you to give your response. You know, maybe you already have AI deeply integrated into your workflow. Maybe it's something you're using individually. Maybe you aren't exploring AI at all yet. No wrong answer here. We just kind of want to get an idea of what it looks like among everybody, and we'll respond to our numbers a little bit later. But with that also, we do want to hear if anyone's using anything great that is changing your life, or you're saying, hey, this is a wonderful tool, throw it in the chat. Let's all experience and hear, you know, what's being used that's been great for you. So I see a lot of responses coming in. I'm going to give There's a lot of usage going on. Okay, this is fun. Thank you all. I'm going to wait and give you a few more moments because I know there's many more people that have a chance to respond, and we would love to hear from you. And so really looking at a lot of people definitely using it independently within their organizations. It's a great starting point as we speak. Sabrina, thank you for sharing Copilot. Oh, case notes. What did we do before transcription, friends? What did we do? And Gamma with slides. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a life changer. It makes it so much quicker and easier. So thank you all for participating in that. But let's really start digging in and looking at a few everyday examples of AI automation in action. So think about tasks in your office that are super repetitive, crunching data. For example, if you've ever tried using Chat GPT, it's so much quicker. You can throw in a spreadsheet and have everything sorted in seconds, which is wonderful, you know, freeing up time. But consider customer service. Customer service, how often do you get a person? When you're on a phone call, you don't. You're generally going through some form of automation initially, or it's a chat bot. AI is out there in every position. Think of scheduling a meeting. It's so much nicer if you have Calendly or any other type of link out there that can book that for you, and you're not sending 20 emails back and forth. But you notice that there's a pattern in each of these things that I'm sharing. They're very routine interactions. They're very repetitive tasks. And these are the three things that they have in common. You know, first, they're repetitive. They have clear rules. Second, they deal with digital information and data that AI can easily process. And third, they don't require a lot of in-person interaction or complex human judgment to be completed. There's just not a need for reading human response, body language, or behavior. And so these are the judgment calls in these tasks that, according to Forbes, as many as 50 to 60% of all roles could be automated that align with these specific behaviors in the future. And really over the next couple of decades, that's going to happen. And that doesn't mean everyone loses their jobs. It means how work gets done is being fundamentally reshaped. So knowing this, you might wonder, how big is this shift going to get? If AI can do all these routine tasks, what does that mean for the workforce at large? And Julie, what do the numbers look like that really back this information up?
I think that's a really important part to mention, Nikki, is, and I did quite a bit of research preparing for this and looked at research from PwC, McKinsey, et cetera. And what I learned is that by 2030, most of the estimates I'm seeing, especially from McKinsey, I quoted this specifically from McKinsey, are about 30% of the current jobs are going to be automated. So that means these are jobs, for example, like it may be a doctor's note recorder, things like that, that you now can have AI fully take on, where you wouldn't have to have that job even exist because it's not necessary anymore. So we think there's going to be about 30% of the jobs out there that likely will shift and not be necessary based on AI. Now, that's really important because we actually, in our minds, we think it's going to be 80% of our jobs, but we automatically, every year, we see a lot of jobs kind of fall out of favor, just simply become not necessary. So this is just a little bit more than the average year where we see jobs naturally shift and grow. Now, the better question for most of us on the call, because most of us will not have our jobs taken, but we will have our jobs modified. So out of those of us out there left, about 60% of us will have a significant change in how we actually do our jobs. So wildly important to recognize that. And when you think about the amount of change within our job, and we'll come back to this in just a minute as well, it's about, so you think about your entire job and it's about 100% of what you do now. About 70% of what you do now will be different by 2030. So the actual tasks we do to be successful in our roles will need to evolve based on what AI can take away from us and what become the primarily human value we can drive to these objectives and projects. But important to know as well, while we're losing about 30% of jobs, as their jobs will be automated, there will be brand new roles expected to join. And these are roles specifically in the STEM functionality. So creative industries or those sort of mathematics, engineering, those sorts of types of jobs. We expect to see growth in those areas because those are jobs that leverage AI, but you still need that human component. But with all of this, the best estimates we're getting out of McKinsey is that by 2030, we will have an added $13 trillion to our economy based on the efficiencies brought from AI. So you can see that this is one genie that will not be put back in the bottle. Let's talk a little bit more about that 70% of role evolution, because I think this is really important for all of us to understand, because there will be a reskilling that is necessary. That is something that is well defined and well documented. And what that means is we need to start to understand what are the skills we actually will need in the future. And certain skills will become increasingly more important. And so you can see right here on the slide, number one, I always laugh that we have three things guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and change. Being able to continuously learn and manage this change will serve us well. So that continuous learning will be the very top skill. And I expect that to remain for probably the rest of my life, because we will constantly be having shifting expectations around what is the man versus what is the machine responsibility in actually getting work done. But beyond that continuous learning, I will say there are three other critical skills we know are going to be important in the future. That first one being prompt engineering. And for any of us that have used AI or have become somewhat digitally proficient with AI, you know that almost all of the value comes to how well you can ask the question. And I liken this back to interview questions. If you just ask someone, "How are you doing today?" or "How did you get here?" you're going to get a very generic answer. But if you ask someone an interview question that says, "Tell me about a time where you did this specific skill in this environment during this time frame," you get much better data on the back end. Well, that's the same thing with prompt engineering. You have to know how to ask.
Okay. I think Julie has frozen. Um, Let me just step in. So, prompt engineering. You really have to be able to understand how to ask the question correctly. And if anyone has been in Chat GPT, then sometimes you have to go back several times to re-ask and get the questions correct. But critical thinking, you need to be able to think critical, because AI is not always going to give you the correct response to what you're looking for. Sometimes you really need to be able to evaluate and understand that the information that's coming through is right. And AI literacy, your ability to understand the capabilities that are coming from within. Julie, I'm going to let you take over and I'm going to get the screen back.
Actually, if you'll take the screen, my computer completely died, so I'm just working off of my computer. I don't know what just happened, but it went completely black. So you can see this is why you can't just rely on technology here, guys. This is exactly why we need the human intervention. So
yes,
I think I was just rejoining right when you were talking about AI literacy. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
perfect. Okay,
There we
so
go.
perfect. And I apologize so much for this, everyone.
Oh.
So, again, the idea of technology, it can either help or hinder us. But so it's really important for us to begin to operationalize this relationship between man and machine, because ultimately, the power players of the future are those of us that can understand how to get the most out of machine. That's going to be the difference in the haves and have-nots of the future. So it's really important to understand that there's complexity in AI, and we need to understand it, how to best use it so it will help versus harm, because it does have the capacity to potentially do both. So there will ultimately be two major areas that we really need to focus on when we think about this. The first is, does someone actually understand how to utilize AI concepts and methods? So how can they actually operationalize this, use their time efficiently, and know when to use AI? But the second part of that is how do I then apply it? Which we know so often in life, it's actually the application that becomes much more difficult. And especially when it comes to AI, it's not only do you know how to actually put it into practice, but do you know how to do that ethically? Do you know how to do that responsibly? So there's an added level of sophistication that's required of how you actually apply these skills. How do you have skepticism and actually go back to understand what's being missed? But overall, for any company, and Nikki, we can go to that next slide. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. I thought we were talking about this one. So I'm sorry. These are, as you can see here, we'll move to the 3 challenges and considerations for every company out there. And there are 3 big ones. So let's just talk through this. The first one is the one we just hit. Am I still going to have a job? What will my job look like? How am I going to be successful? What are my key performance indicators? So almost everyone out there has some little bit of anxiety around, what is Gen AI actually going to do to how successful I will be on the job? Wildly important for every company out there to be focused on this. Number 2 is going to be all around ethics and governance. So this is extremely important as you think about, if someone were to unleash our database in AI, it could surf that and it could unlock all sorts of information into the general public. So having very clear guidelines of how people can succeed or utilize AI within your framework or what's acceptable within your business policies. I've had many, many conversations, as Nikki said, with CEOs around the globe, and almost every single one of them, this is one of the things they're struggling with the most. How do we maximize the efficiency and minimize the risk? And there's a very fine line here that we really need individuals to understand and providing clear guidance around. So we'll come back to this in the end. Number 3 is all about equity and equitable access. Because as I mentioned before, pretty soon the world's going to be made up of people who know how to leverage AI and people who don't.
Yeah.
The people who know how to leverage AI will get jobs, and the people who don't will not. So it's really important for us to be thinking about, how are we providing training and opportunity to all to have this opportunity to level up? So these are the 3 challenges that we expect are going to hit every job. But can you tell us, Nikki, a little bit about how this will impact particular generations?
Absolutely. And the impact is different across the generations considerably. We immediately think Gen Z is going to have it easy because they've grown up with this technology. They're sort of the pros at it, and that's kind of reverse order. But you immediately start looking to the younger when you want help with any type of technology. But the reality is, Julie just walked us through some of those big picture challenges like job security, ethics, and access. But that's affecting Gen Z as well. In the Gen Z group, you're looking at entry-level roles have been significantly impacted, with 49% of Gen Z thinking that their college degree really isn't of any value because of generative AI. Um, you've got traditional entry points to their careers being disrupted right now, and jobs that were and tasks that were once assigned to them no longer there. They've been taken over. However, that doesn't mean it's ending for them or their opportunities are few. AI can also democratize career access by lowering skill barriers and fostering these new apprenticeships for them. So, Gen Z workers who embrace AI early are going to gain competitive advantages and can accelerate their career progression. And then millennials and Gen X. Really, and Gen X being the greatest generation that we have listed up here, I just wanted to throw out there in case you were wondering. But really, they are starting to see, these are generally your professionals age group, and starting to see automation of repetitive tasks that have, for some, defined their roles for years and years. And this creates challenges, but also this is giving opportunities, you guys, for reinvention. Those that have AI skills are going to see growth and pay premiums and enhanced mobility within the company. They're going to be making upskilling initiatives and organizations who are able to provide a clear pathway for these mid-career professionals to develop their AI literacy and to pivot to higher value growth are going to see, better lineage, better succession models throughout their organization, et cetera. And not only that, you're going to have happy employees that aren't walking in fear, and have a lot of value. But then you get to boomers. And so we're looking at boomers because of their deep experience, and nobody knows what's going on in the workplace like a boomer that has been there for a long time. They're able to speak with a level of wisdom and understanding throughout an entire organization that is just unsurpassed. And so we value them greatly, but they're often the group that's going to be the most challenged by technology, mainly from a fear perspective. Not that they don't have ability. I think in terms, I know Julie shared a great story about a purple mouse, about a friend that she had that's wonderful, long since retired, a boomer, but his expertise is so great that his industry has brought him back to work because he's like a construction whisperer, as she said, so he can walk onto a job site and look and say, oh, there's something wrong there. Knows within a second, when anyone else has to spend a lot of time evaluating and testing, he just knows. But he had some way, somehow downloaded a purple mouse icon as his picture on his phone. And so when he's reaching out to CEOs of other companies that they're working with and he's calling them, they have a purple mouse showing up. And so he's understandably upset and he's like, hey, how do I get help with this? And actually just went and bought another phone. So we don't want people buying a new phone. We want people to understand how to leverage technology. We want the employees of our organization to understand how to use. And so in order to do that, you can see across the board here, you're going to have to communicate differently because each one of these generations communicates incredibly differently amongst one another. And so that means, varying training models. What do they look like? How do you foster a culture of continuous learning and knowledge sharing when you do have very uniquely, differently poised generational groups across your organization, which is a win? And AI is going to touch employees of all ages, of all levels within your organization. And the way we help them adapt is absolutely going to differ. And so next, Julie is going to talk about AI's impact and how it differs by leadership level in an organization, and which is another incredibly important angle to consider.
Absolutely. And I just need to go ahead and own Nikki. The story she just told was of my father. And I was the person who had to figure out how to get the purple mouse out of his phone and could not. So I laugh so hard because yes, he is consulting with these $1 million enterprises. And when he calls, it pops up as a purple mouse. So you can imagine the embarrassment and the frustration. So, but the reality here is, as you can see on the screen, the level in the organization also impacts really what your relationship and requirements around AI will be. So let's talk through this. As you can imagine at the very top, it's really important for executives to understand the guardrails, the vision, the governance, that efficiency and risk, as we talked about, making sure that they're making the right decisions for how they want to implement AI within their organization. Because if they don't do it fast enough, the competition will pass them. If they do it too fast, they're going to put their employees and their business at risk. So there's a very, very clear strategy that needs to go on from our very senior leadership executives. Now, let's go to the exact opposite, which is our individual contributors or entry level. As Nikki just shared, oftentimes those are our new graduate roles. And those are the roles that are ripe for innovation and automation. Think about the new grad who all they're doing is looking at old Excel files to understand how to make sense of something. That's exactly what AI can do very easily for us. So for those younger talent or entry level talent, I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to be very clear. If you want to be a professional and you do not know AI, it'll be very difficult for you to get a job in the future because these jobs will need to harness the value of AI. There will be no mistake on that. So it will be really critical for our professional entry level roles that AI literacy is something they're very familiar with. So now we always have at the top, it's really about those governance and those guardrails. At the bottom, it's all about knowing how to operationalize the technology. So as all things in life, that mid-level is where we really are going to see the implementation and the strategy. So these are the leaders that are central to embedding this AI. So these are the people that will help you take away the challenges that you see and how you're actually going to apply it. They're the people that are going to help cascade the strategy and share with you where to implement AI, how to leverage it, etc. So those are really going to be our change agents, that mid-level leaders. So if you have mid-level leaders that are technology agnostic or resistant, it's going to be a challenge to see how their functions will actually flow in the new world era. So looking at this, I just want to reflect back because fall of 2024, imagine you're in a room. This is a room. It was the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology and our leading edge conference. And in this room, there are leadership experts from coast to coast who are there to understand how to really drive the very best out of your leaders. And imagine there is this keynote that everyone was talking about and so excited about. And this keynote was the Chief Technology Officer of Extreme Networks. And if you're not familiar with Extreme Networks, they're a major cloud computing organization. And so their CTO gets on stage talking with this leadership expert, and we think he's going to give us these pearls of wisdom. And what he actually says changed my life in such a powerful way and not in the way you'd imagine. But he stood up on stage and said, let me just explain this to you guys. I run the technology firm for Extreme Networks. We are, I think it was a $15 billion organization at that time, so wildly large. And let me tell you this right now, Extreme Networks does not have a single leader in our technology organization. So you could have heard a pin drop in this room because it was all leadership experts there to learn about leadership. And he just told us he does not have leaders. And they've gotten 16 quarters, quarter over quarter, double-digit growth. So they're doing something right, and it does not involve any profession, any expertise of anyone in that room. So there was a moment where a collective panic was heard across the room. And there's never been more active happy hour after that day because every single one of us were chomping at the bit to think about how could that be and what does this mean? But at the end of the day, we had a long debrief with this gentleman. And what we understood is, despite having excellent opportunity when it comes to coding and QAing coding and understanding how to deliver these, there are three things that AI cannot take from us. There are three things that are uniquely human that we really need people to have, that it cannot be replaced. And the first is emotional intelligence. So how to understand and respond to nuanced human emotions, because it's not something that's by the book. It's not something that's predictable. Number two it's ethical judgment. And so this is all about how do you begin to take all of these factors into consideration and weigh what is the best and future most decision that's really going to serve us. And the third is creating connections that drive that collaboration. Because let's be real, it will still be who we know that helps us get jobs, helps us get contracts, helps us level up. So having that relationship building or being able to bring together or bridge different synergies of different companies will still be a uniquely human contribution. So it is really important that despite all of the advantages that we will get from AI, that we do not lose emotional intelligence, ethical judgment, and relationship building, because those will not go away as human requirements within functions. So let's take this example into a real world example that has played out in my own life. And this is around the role of customer service. And we all know and have expectations around customer service when we hear that word. So Nikki, if we can go to the next slide really quickly. This is just an analysis that we did over the foundational customer service representative skills that were asked of us from 2017 through today. So you can see some of the biggest losers are things around, do they know basic computer literacy? Because let's be real, it's very hard to live in 2026 and not have some basic computer literacy. It's also less important that you understand writing or written communication. Well, let's be real, because oftentimes there's spell check. Oftentimes there's translation tools. There's tools that will help us do our job with these hard skills. But what's rising, those skills that are even more important than they were before, are things like how do I collaborate, especially collaborate across functions to get decisions made? Do I have empathy? Am I dependable? Will I work well in a team? So those, as it used to, those are the skills that have really been rising. And Nikki, if we look at the next slide, we can see how those skills have changed over time. So when I joined SHL back in 2012, the skills we were measuring from a customer service representative, you can see here were things like, do I know how to multitask? Do I know how data entry, typing, and navigation? And time after time, I was involved with validation studies where the biggest predictor of success was actually how fast you type and how well you navigate. But the world catches up, and the reality is most of us can type pretty decently. Most of us can navigate the computer pretty well. But what we now are struggling with is, are we being thorough with our responses? Are we giving clear communication? Are we going the extra step to make sure their needs are actually met? Are we being conscientious about how we present information and packaging it in a way in which people can receive it? So we're starting to see of that change over 2015 and 2017, and we're starting to see the type of organizations that are really done for service also begin to change. But now you can look at of the last couple of years, the competencies and skills we're using for customer service are wildly different. It's all about creating that positive impression and maintaining and building good working relationships and adapting to change and listening effectively. So those are all wildly important skills and competencies. And you can see over the past 12 years, we've conducted over 130 studies. That means we've taken our assessments and what clients want us to measure, and then we've actually studied their workforce, and we've measured to ensure the assessment can predict what's important for our clients. We've done over 130 of these in customer service, and have been able to prove this evolution of skills over time without us even recognizing it. But Nikki, if we go to the next slide, it really makes sense when we start to think about how the actual job of customer service has shifted over time. So you can see 20 years ago, or about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, the majority of their time was spent in product or service issues. Well, guess what? Most of us, the reality is that when I have a product or service issue, I don't call the company anymore. The first thing I do is Google or AI. I ask the question. Oftentimes I can get the answer faster through YouTube than even calling the company. So the way I seek information as a consumer has changed, which means the expectation of what we need in customer service has changed, because so much of that can be covered by technology. So we're seeing a shrinkage when we think about the number of complaints we're working with, because again, we can give our complaints to AI and make that go away. We're seeing a shrinkage when it comes to, hey, what's my status on this? Or do I have this capability? People can check that online. They don't need that as much anymore. And we're certainly seeing a reduction in our service issues. but we're seeing much more focus on the actual inquiry or seeking knowledge and information or having a conversation about competitive differentiation. So it's much more complex inquiries that we're getting of how do I map these two systems together, which means what someone has to do is no longer just the tactical, here's how much you owe on your bill, or here's where you send your check. And it's much more about thinking about what is their question and why can't that be served by simple technology? So the competencies we really need in customer service have changed, which also means the key performance indicators of customer service have also changed. So think about this. Back in the early days, the key performance indicators we heard all the time was average handle time, average handle time. And our goal was to reduce average handle time as much as possible because that meant profit. Those days are over because it's no longer about how short of an amount of time can you answer the question or get off the phone. It's about how thorough can you answer their question and get off the phone. So it's now moved from average handle time to first call resolution. Because the reality is as a consumer, if you can't solve my problem in the first go, I'm going to look for alternatives. That's how short our time and attention span is. So it's really important that you see not only are the expectations of the market changing, that means that the competencies and skills of the role are changing, which means the key performance indicators or the expectations or how we pay our customer service reps also need to change, which means across the board, how we're measuring and hiring our service workers has gone through an evolution, just like we expect to see with almost every other job out there. So I think this was a really good example of how jobs have been changing before our very eyes, even without AI, although AI will impact this even more, to show you how these changes actually look in real life. Perfect. So let's move on because I think it's important now that you understand that, gosh, 30% of jobs will likely completely shift out of the workforce. 60% of our jobs will be going through massive transformation. What does that mean for us? So let's talk a little bit about what your role is in this transformation. And there are three major target areas. We talked about one a little bit already, and we'll come back to this in a minute, but it's all about our AI governance. This is table stakes. No company can get away without having rules of engagement around AI. So everyone's going to have to do this. It's just a matter if you know what really matters. So we'll come back to this one in just a minute. Number two, as we talked about with a 70% shift in skills, we know there's going to have to be a massive reskilling, not for part of the organization, but basically for all of the organization as we think about how we get work done. So this idea of the shift of the capability and the reskilling is extremely, extremely important. Number three, and we're going to spend some time on this as well, is the update of succession management practices. Because guess what? If your workforce is changing, your skills are changing, and there's evolution happening, who you handpick for that one-to-one replacement is probably not going to be the right person anymore. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute. But as you can see here, we are expecting massive change to organizations. So Nikki, do you want to share more?
I would say on the changes, touching on what you were just saying, Julie, it's what I'm hearing all the time now from different people. Even just yesterday, I was talking to someone, they haven't changed their succession management strategy in 80 years because it worked. It was successful for them. And think how nice that is to continue. But now they've hit a point because our climate is so different. Everything has it's rapid, the increase in the changes that we're incurring. And they've come to a point they're like, ooh, now we're looking for a different person. And we're coming to that real